Welcome to Beyond the Data. I'm Dr. Phoebe Thorpe, and here with me today is Dr. Brian King from CDC's Office on Smoking and Health. Thank you for joining us, Brian.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Our topic today is e-cigarettes. Can you tell us why they're considered a tobacco product?
Yeah, so in the United States, we regulate tobacco products through the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And the way they describe a tobacco product is any product that's made or derived from tobacco. And we know that the vast majority of nicotine that's used in tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, is indeed derived from tobacco. And so since these products contain nicotine, we consider them a tobacco product in the United States.
And e-cigarettes are a little bit different than regular cigarettes. Can you describe how they work?
Yeah, so e-cigarettes is short for electronic cigarette, but we know them by a lot of different names. And they can be called things like vapor products, hookah pens, vape pens. But the bottom line is they're all really the same product. And they work by containing a liquid that's heated, which the user then inhales into their lungs. And it's important to note that this isn't technically a vapor, which is how people frequently refer to it. It's actually an aerosol that contains small particle as well as various other ingredients that the user inhales. And so there's no combustion, you're not burning anything, but there is a heating of a liquid which turns into an aerosol which the user inhales, and they can also exhale into the air as other bystanders are around them.
And the aerosol is not just water vapor. I mean, that's an important part to understand because I get asked as a physician about e-cigarettes, and the thing from the session that I found very interesting was the idea that we're not really certain about the risks that flavorings add to e-cigarettes. The one that was mentioned was the butter flavoring, diacetyl, that has been associated with bronchiolitis obliterans, or what's called popcorn lung, which is a deadly disease. What more do we know about the risks of e-cigarettes?
So our knowledge about what's contained in both the e-cigarette liquid as well as the aerosol has continued to evolve over time. These products entered the United States marketplace in around 2007, and they didn't start to really uptick in use until 2010, 2011. But since that time, we've really increased the amount of research into what these products contain. And what we can say is that the aerosol emitted by these products is not harmless. We do know that the ingredients and the levels are significantly less dangerous than conventional cigarettes, but that doesn't mean that they're completely risk-free. And so some of the ingredients we found in the e-cigarette aerosol are things like ultrafine particulate that can be inhaled very deep into the lungs, and also heavy metals that are found in the filaments of the device and are emitted in the aerosol, as well as things like volatile organic compounds. But one of the most common ingredients is nicotine. And we know that nicotine is highly addictive, but there's also evidence indicating that it can harm the developing adolescent brain, which really makes it important for youth to avoid these devices. In addition to some of these other harmful ingredients, we also know the flavorings. And so diacetyl is just one, but there are a variety of different flavorings that are used that, although they may be safe to ingest in things like food, we don't know what the risks are for inhaling these devices into the lungs. Your gut can handle a lot more than your lungs, and that's really important when we look at the ingredients in these products. And finally, it's also important to remember that people are using a lot of things in e-cigarettes, and that includes other psychoactive substances like marijuana and THC and others. And so when we're talking about youth in particular, the use of both the nicotine-containing varieties as well as other varieties for other types of drugs are really a public health concern.
Okay, but we have had some recent good news about the youth, meaning middle school and high school use of e-cigarettes. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, it's really a commendable public health accomplishment. We started assessing e-cigarette use among youth in this country in 2011, and through 2015, we saw exponential increases in the use of this product. And 2016 was the first time that we actually saw a decline among youth in this country. And that was really a result of the coordinated efforts to not only educate the public about the harms of youth e-cigarette use, but also implementing common sense strategies to not only prevent youth access, but also to protect people from the aerosol in public environments and various other campaigns to educate people about these products. But on balance, the bad news is that we still have over 2 million youth that are using e-cigarettes, and they're now the most commonly used tobacco product used among U.S. youth. So we've made great progress, but we really need to continue that momentum to reduce all forms of tobacco product use among youth.
So it's going down, but not as much as we'd like. So what's driving the use of the e-cigarettes in in teens?
So there's a variety of factors that we believe are contributing to these increased rates of use among youth that we saw through 2015. One of the most notable is the advertising for these products. We know that many of the themes and tactics that have been used to advertise conventional cigarettes are frequently used for e-cigarettes. And we also know that there's some media for which conventional cigarette advertising is banned that is allowed for e-cigarettes, things like television. And so there's really a prominent advertising of these products, and we know that it's reaching kids in particular. About 18 million U.S. youth reported being exposed to e-cigarette ads in 2014. Another factor is flavorings, and we know from the existing science that flavorings can be particularly appealing in terms of enticing youth and young adults to use tobacco products, and a variety of e-cigarettes are flavored. And we know from the existing data that about 2/3 of youth who use e-cigarettes report using flavored varieties, and flavors are the most commonly cited reason for why youth started using these products. And so in the end, we really have a situation where the advertising is bringing the horse to water, the flavorings are getting them to drink, and then the nicotine is keeping them coming back for more. And so it's kind of a perfect storm in terms of the youth rates of this use. But the good news is we know what works to prevent that. And if we implement those common sense public health strategies, we can continue to see the declines that we saw within the past year among our nation's youth.
And the real concern is about nicotine and the teenage brain. Can you just briefly tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so nicotine is found in the vast majority of e-cigarettes that are sold on the U.S. market. And, nicotine we use in things like nicotine replacement therapy among adults, and it can be, an effective drug to help people quit conventional cigarette smoking. But it's important to note that those are in very measured doses, and that it wanes the individual off of conventional cigarettes over time. But nicotine is not necessarily risk-free, particularly for vulnerable populations. We know that nicotine is highly addictive, but there's also a growing body of scientific evidence that was outlined in a recent Surgeon General's report noting that nicotine exposure can harm the developing adolescent brain. And we know that the brain continues to develop into young adulthood up through 25 or 26. And so there's really implications for not only youth use of these products, but also young adult use of any nicotine-containing product.
Yeah.
And another thing to remember with nicotine is it's also been shown to result in adverse health outcomes among pregnant women, and particularly fetal toxicity. So there's also implications about pregnant women using any form of nicotine-containing product. And so it's really important for them to talk with their physician before they use any type of nicotine-containing product, including e-cigarettes.
So is there a place that physicians could go to learn a little bit more about these parts with the e-cigarettes and the nicotine?
So there's many resources that have been developed over the past few years, particularly as the science has begun to grow and we have more concrete evidence about what works effectively to help warn people about these products and also provide them scientific-based information to make informed decisions. And in 2016, the U.S. Surgeon General released a landmark report on e-cigarette use among youth and young adults. And as part of the release of that report, there were several materials, including resources and provider cards to help health professionals really communicate to their both children and adults about these products. And so in the context of youth, it really enforces the importance of warning them about the dangers of these products, particularly with regard to the nicotine content. And among adults, it's a more nuanced conversation about knowing that we do have FDA-approved medications to help people quit, and those should really be the first line of defense to help you quit. And if that doesn't work, you can consider e-cigarettes, but in consultation with your healthcare provider. And right now, based on the evidence we have, there's no conclusive evidence that e-cigarettes are effective for long-term cessation. And so it's really important to use those resources that we know are most effective to help you quit in coordination with your healthcare provider.
And then for youth, where, if parents or other adults wanted to know more about how they could talk to teens and young adults about the risks of e-cigarettes, where would they find some information about that?
So as part of the release of the Surgeon General's report, there's an excellent interactive website that was coordinated with the release of that report, and it is e-cigarettes.surgeongeneral.gov. And it has a variety of information on both the report itself, as well as a public service announcement, as well as informational cards for both parents and clinicians to educate youth and young adults in particular about the dangers and risks of using these products.
That sounds like an excellent place for our viewers to go and see what they can find out. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for joining us. See you next month on Beyond the Data.